Torchwood is back, but this time the 1950s are in danger. As in today's Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest Torchwood special box set release, which is Torchwood Soho Parasite, as written by James Goss, featuring Norton Folgate as portrayed by Samuel Barnett, Sgt Andy Davison as portrayed by Tom Price, Joe Shire as Gideon Lyme, as well as Lizabeth Hayhoe as portrayed by Dervla Kirwan in a brand new Torchwood spin-off series, a Doctor Who spin-off of a spin-off. Only Big Finish can do that. Now this is a release that I have in fact been looking forward to for quite a number of months, which is rather unusual because over lockdown I've been listening to quite a number of main range releases from the Torchwood series and also Aliens Among Us, and prior to the release of this box set it was one that instantly captivated my attention because the only other Torchwood series I listened to at that point was Torchwood 1, and there's something about the niche Torchwood series that really do appeal to me because it delves into an area of Torchwood that has been previously completely undiscovered, and it's new characters the likes that we see in this box set that make the release worth listening to. Torchwood Soho Parasite is available to be ordered now on the Big Finish website at the pre-order price of £19.99 for the physical CD and £16.99 for the download. After October 2020, it will be going up to the standard recommended retail of around £30. The director and script editor for this series is Scott Handcock, the producer and writer is James Goss, with music and sound design by Blair Moat and Steve Foxon, and additional music by Murray Gold. The cover artist is Lee Binding, and the executive producers are Nicholas Briggs and Jason Haig-Ellery. At the current time of recording, there's no second box set for Torchwood Soho on the Big Finish website. However, hopefully after the success of this box set, that may change in the future. I certainly hope so. So I must admit, when they started announcing further details for this box set, I started to get a little bit concerned, because initially I thought that it was just going to be 3 one-hour stories, much like Torchwood 1. However, no, this box set is different. It is 6 half-an-hour stories, or 20 minutes to 30 minutes long. And I thought that that was going to be a little bit of a problem for me, because I don't really like the short stories, or at least I didn't up until a few months ago. I must admit the release of Blood on Santa's Claw did make me enjoy the format a bit more, and likewise with the recent Big Finish main range release Time Apart, I also appreciated what could be done with that format. The Torchwood series, I was a little bit unsure because I really like the self-contained 1-hour stories, but instead this box set is one big story, which is something that I was previously unaware of. I thought it was going to be 6 mini missions in a way. However, what I'm really happy to see is that within this box set they're not really 6 parts or 6 episodes, but instead 6 chapters, and the half-an-hour format allows them to flex the plot a little bit and do things that were previously a little bit difficult to do within the 1-hour format. So delving right in there and taking a look at characters, starting off with Lizabeth Hayhoe as portrayed by Dervla Kirwan. Now I think the vast majority of reviews will probably start off with Norton Folgate. However, Lizabeth Hayhoe is my personal favourite character of the box set. I absolutely adore her. As soon as she steps on the scene, I think that everything about her character jumps off the page instantly. She's a character that you respect, she has authority, she has intelligence, and she's the perfect person to be working for Torchwood within the 1950s. However, due to her being a woman, she's not able to have the high-ranking jobs, and instead she's been relegated to Room 13, basically Torchwood's equivalent of admin. They send people off to do more exciting adventures, and as we see throughout the later half of this story, Lizabeth Hayhoe has the capability to carry out these missions herself. Of this absolutely incredible scene that is written by James Goss, excellently acted by Dervla Kirwan, we have this revelation that changes the entire plot of this story, that shows how the enemies behind everything that we see throughout this box set have been stretching the whole concept of humanity and doing things that are very dark and grim, and something that only Torchwood can do. And to be honest, it is that grim I'm surprised that even Big Finish contemplated allowing doing it. However, it is done, it's very hard hitting, and it is something that from this release will stick with me when I reflect on releases I've listened to at the end of 2020. This is one that will stand out. Moving on to Norton Folgate as portrayed by Samuel Barnett. For those of you that have listened to Goodbye Piccadilly, you know exactly what to expect from Norton Folgate. He's a character that is very entertaining and he is a natural lead. And I've not said already, but of course earlier this month I did take a look at the mid-range story Goodbye Piccadilly, and if you are intrigued by the concept of this box set, I definitely recommend listening to Goodbye Piccadilly first, because it is set within 1950s London and it kind of mirrors the style that we get to see throughout this box set. Very fast fast-paced, lots of characters and lots of different personalities. And I imagine that if you like Goodbye Piccadilly, you will absolutely adore this box set because it is basically a continuation of that. And if you haven't listened to Goodbye Piccadilly as of yet, I definitely recommend doing so. Norton Folgate is one of those characters that is generally just a lot of fun because he's a character that you never quite understand what he is thinking in his head. He is cunning, he is intelligent, but also he is manipulative. He will manipulate everybody around him in order to suit the plan that he has got in his head. However, even though he is a team leader, he doesn't actually say the plan that he has. He just goes along with it himself and manipulates other people to do his bidding for him. And of course, something that we get to see within Goodbye Piccadilly is that concept of who is Norton actually working for. Is he working for Torchwood? Is he working for another authority entirely that is much darker and different? As we see throughout this release, he sends people off to go and kill a number of different Nazis, but also at the same time, if there is something going down with an alien invasion, he doesn't particularly care about the people that gets caught within the crossfire, unless they are a part of his little bubble of friends, the likes of Sgt Andy Davison, of course Gideon Lyme, as well as Lizabeth Hayhoe. Those are the people that he cares about. However, at the same time, he still seems to be a little bit lonely. Next up we move on to Gideon Lyme, as portrayed by Joe Shire, an excellent contribution for this box set because he is a black male in the 1950s of London, and therefore his experience is much different to the likes of Sgt Andy Davison and Norton Folgate. Because we are living in a society that basically accept racism during this time period, he has came over to England to have a new start. He wants to become a journalist, and the lead journalist finds out that he is in fact a black male and not white. He decides to not give him the job, and likewise when he goes to his apartment, they don't want to have him in the apartment because he is a black male, and as a result we have a rather difficult series of hard-hitting scenes that are undeniably very racist, however again highlight the challenges during this time period. And throughout the entirety of this box set we have him almost joining Torchwood by accident, being thrown into the mix and basically dragged along by Norton and Andy. He doesn't particularly want to be there, however he is one of the main characters of the story that realises what is going on before everybody else does, and he's a really capable character who also has a little bit of a relationship with Norton Folgate in there as well. I'd absolutely love if that is continued in releases in the future in a sequel to Torchwood Soho, because yes, if anything, this box set deserves a sequel. I want to find out what happens next. I hope that from the success of this one we will see a few more series in the future. And of course we have Sgt Andy Davison in there as well, and when you pair him with Norton Folgate there is an excellent dynamic between them, especially when you have Gideon Lyme thrown in the mix as well. You kind of have that main trio of Torchwood during the 1950s. But Sgt Andy Davison is a lot of fun. He believes that he is the lead of the piece. However, as we find out within the later half of this story, that isn't exactly true, but as per usual and as always, he's enjoyable, he's brilliant, and I think that my respect for Andy has grew quite a lot from the Big Finish 8th Doctor story Stranded, as was the recent Big Finish main range story Red Base, and his involvement within one of the earliest stories being Corpse Day from the Torchwood main range. He is an excellent character, and Big Finish are doing the right thing with experimenting with him and giving him more exposure compared to what he got within the TV show itself. And the beauty of the half-an-hour format for this box set, as I was previously discussing, is that you can have stories from different perspectives. So you can have the first episode introducing Norton Folgate and Lizabeth Hayhoe, then in chapter 2 you can have Gideon Lyme coming in, and then their paths cross, and then once you've introduced all of the main new characters for this box set, you then throw in Sgt Andy Davison and complete the trio of Torchwood within this time period. And given that it is only a 3-hour story, it does do a lot with the narrative. It makes it feel a lot longer, and it's one of those releases that once you start listening to it you get hooked from the beginning, or at least I did. It's one of those box sets that once you click play you want to see it through until the very end, because the pace of the box set is brilliant. The fact the episodes are only half an hour long means that a lot of the drama is bite-sized and fast-paced, and it's rather motivational to simply want to make you listen to the next bit. It's only another half an hour, it's only another half an hour, as opposed to sitting aside a whole hour to listen to a story, which sometimes can be quite difficult to do. When you only have half an hour chapter points, it's a lot easier and user-friendly to listen to and experience overall. However, if you're anything like me, you'll end up binge listening it for the entirety of an evening instead. So now moving on to the actual narrative itself. As we've already seen throughout this review, there's a lot of characters to discuss, and as a result they really drive the narrative forward, and if we didn't have characters as strong as this to keep this story together, the series simply wouldn't work. The narrative and the pairing of the characters works perfectly and simultaneously creates this very strong narrative overall. Of course, we're set within London during the 1950s, during Soho to be exact, and Soho is a bustling area of London with lots of diversity and lots of different people doing lots of different things, and there's lots of dark things going on within Soho during this time period, lots of death, and also at the same time we have the whole problem of pollution due to the Great Smog of the 1950s, previously covered within the Doctor Who story The Creeping Death, as written by Roy Gill, alongside the 10th Doctor and Donna. And there's a few references to the events of the Great Smog, and generally the Great Smog makes life in London a little bit more difficult on a day-to-day basis, but also at the same time affects people's health because they are breathing in all these fumes from the pollution from the cars, but also the factories. They are living within the shadows of the World Wars. At this point, London is still rebuilding. There's lots of sites throughout London that have been destroyed during the wars, and a lot of people would have been living next to houses that were bombed, and they just haven't been demolished as of yet, and there's still these bare shelves of buildings that have been left as a memory of what was previously happening only a number of years ago. And because of that, we have the whole concept of the World Wars interwoven throughout the plot of this box set, and that becomes more prominent within the later half. I did really love the concept of World War being thrown in there, but also the involvement of Nazis, or at least the what is left of the Nazi party after the events of the World Wars, because a vast majority of them are in hiding, and the other ones that weren't in hiding had just been killed by Norton Folgate. So we have this whole concept of Hermout, and Hermout is basically the Nazi equivalent of Torchwood, and of course Torchwood like to try and use weapons as best as possible in order to further the British Empire, in order to protect humanity. When you put those weapons into the hands of the Nazis, they of course want to turn those weapons against humanity itself, especially when you have Torchwood weapons. You have the whole concept of human weaponry and an alien involvement in there as well, and basically chemical warfare to an extreme, and packages being sent from Germany to England and basically letting all hell let loose. As suggested by the title, this box set is completely surrounded by the concept of parasites, and in particular fungi, and throughout the entirety of this series duration we see the whole effect of fungi being unleashed on London and people being attacked by this fungi. And again, due to it being Torchwood, it is a little bit more grim compared to what you would expect within a Doctor Who story. There's a few funny moments where the fungi people are basically reduced to the concept of a lumbering monster due to the darker concepts that are interwoven throughout the plot that I was previously mentioning earlier. That underpins the story overall, and those darker concepts that have been used to create this fungi to make it as effective against humanity as possible. And it is very, very satisfying to see this fungi growing from the very early stages within the first few chapters of this release, and then it building up throughout the entirety of this episode's duration. It creates a sense of an invasion, and the final act once again definitely delivers. We have all the characters doing their own bit, and we also have the actual members of Torchwood coming under threat due to the fungi. It shows that not everybody is safe, and you don't quite know if everybody is going to get out of it alive. Of course, one of the main things with, say, Torchwood aliens among us or gods among us is the likelihood of, say, Gwen or Jack surviving is pretty high because they are characters from the actual TV show itself, and it would take a lot of guts to kill them off. You have a box set the likes of this where pretty much half of the cast are brand new Big Finish creations. You never know, some character might have been introduced throughout this box set simply to be killed off within the later half and basically tug at your heartstrings entirely. And let's face it, that is something that James Goss does on a almost weekly basis. He's a brilliant writer, and this box set is basically a perfect example as to why. Another brief mention as well, I really like the way that Torchwood is incorporated within government at this point, and basically them working together, or at least trying to work together, in order to use alien technology and protecting the British Empire. We still have a rather amateur variation of Torchwood. Don't get me wrong, there is more authority there and more tools and more understanding of alien life, especially compared to the likes of Save Our Souls and Fortitude with Queen Victoria, as portrayed by Rowena Cooper, where within those stories we are introduced to a very different version of Torchwood that is still kind of unsure what it is there for. It knows it's there to protect the British Empire from people up there in space. However, it doesn't quite know the extent, and everything at this point is still quite unknown, and that unknown nature is still used within Torchwood Soho Parasite to move forward a bit more. There's a few suggestions by Lizabeth Hayhoe throughout this story of the possibility of a woman eventually ruling over Torchwood, which of course we now know is foreshadowing of Von Hartmann, which I thought was a really lovely touch. And again, every single character throughout this story almost has a different motive to further their own aim. It's very atmospheric, and very much like Goodbye Piccadilly, it is of the time. I love how James Goss has actually incorporated events from this time period into the story itself. For example, we have involvement of the Skylon, which was basically this massive inflatable that was tied up within the London Air Show back in the 1950s. And I like that because it actually happened in reality. However, it has been given a million twists. Yes, I like the fact that it's tying in actual historical fact, because that makes the box set and the overall setting and environment a lot more believable.
In summary, for Torchwood Soho Parasite, this series exceeded my expectations and more. The setting of 1950s London was perfectly expanded from its initial use in Goodbye Piccadilly. The main protagonists and supporting cast are displaying a variety of roles, capturing the bustling city life, but also the daunting prospect of what is lurking in the London smog. The 50s team of Torchwood is a world away from the 21st century modern Torchwood, having their own bunker and little office rooms long before the building of Canary Wharf. This is a team of Earth defenders, trying their best with what they have, living in the shadows of the world wars and the rise of chemical warfare, in a similar style to a calculated detective drama. The alien fungi was an interesting twist, and for once having an alien that doesn't necessarily talk turns all the focus on the Torchwood team, which is greatly appreciated. With many laughs accompanied by drinks, sadness, possibilities of death, it's a gripping character drama with a hell of a story to tell.
I really did enjoy this box set. It is an absolutely phenomenal piece of writing with some really excellent characters, and the cast itself is very strong, and I really look forward to see what is next as a part of this series. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week, as well as regular Big Finish reviews. And of course on that note, I will see you all next time. Bye for now.